Hi Larry. Hi again.
Hey,
Thanks.
how you doing?
Thanks again for joining.
No problem. Appreciate you inviting me back on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's going to be like a 20-minute, really quick. I don't think I'm going to open up to the audience today or not.
Hmm.
We'll see. But we're talking about syndications. So I've never done a syndication, but a syndication to me is just a fancy way of saying partnership. It's just having more than two, more than four, more than five, maybe more than 10 even investors on one deal. And typically probably see that on, commercial buildings like office buildings, medical offices, and low income housing. When I worked for a national equity fund here in Chicago, all we did was low income housing, and most of those deals were done with, big investment firms that did these types of syndications, um, to create these deals and stuff. So, yeah, so I think it's a lengthy process. I mean, read into it. I mean, it probably takes a while for sometimes to get zoning approved. It could take maybe years even sometimes, but I don't know, depending on the type of deal. But that's how I see syndication. I'll, have Larry kind of jump in and talk about it.
No, I definitely appreciate that. Yeah, so that's definitely a good base, a good, definitely good understanding of just a partnership where you have active investors and passive investors coming together, and there's a legal aspect to it from a SEC perspective that people need to be mindful of, especially if they're raising capital for others, and with the expectation that they're doing all the management decision and they're passive investors are just reaping the rewards. So definitely something you want to make sure you're talking to an attorney that's familiar with SEC regulations as well as tax advisors as well. They're familiar with it also, because like I say, even if it's not like the zoning, the finding the deal, raising it, like all that's still going to be a lengthy process, especially if you're doing it for large projects. You don't really don't see this too much in single family homes or small multifamily. Is typically your larger development, your larger apartment complexes that you see this kind of being done with, especially in real estate.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the reason I wanted to do a podcast about it was because, you know, it's a world that's open to a lot of individuals. So if I wanted to I have trust issues, so I can't even find myself one partner to buy, one multifamily unit with. But, if I had to find, five more investors, it would probably make it a lot easier and mitigate the risk a little bit, because I would diversify my not only my portfolio, but I would add, a number of investors to the deal who could either bring in capital, or borrow from banks, and that way increase the pool of investment money to put towards a big property. So that's why I think I like real estate so much, is because anybody can really do it if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there's definitely a huge trust aspect to it. I mean, no different than if you was putting your money into stocks and whatever company that you feel comfortable with and don't know they're going to give you good dividend return. Same thing with real estate and these syndications where it's like, hey, who is the operating group that you're entrusting your money with? And then within the operating group itself, like, are you comfortable with the people that's going to be managing this thing together? Like I said, I'm part of several syndications myself at the moment, and like it took a while to kind of build up those relationships. But that's huge because you're working with this group of people that you may not be in the same state, and you're also you're getting money for people that have to entrust you that you're being a good steward with their money. So it's definitely some due diligence needs to be done, not just with the property itself, but also with the team that's going to be executing the operating plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more I get into the business world or real estate world or finance world, it's all about relationship building. That's more important than, building that currency or wealth that you're trying to create. So absolutely, I think that's why it's taking me kind of a lengthy time to, find a partner to, maybe do real estate investing with, like actual property investing, not REITs. So I invest, which are real estate investment trusts. They're just like a real estate stock, which is great. You can invest in rental properties, like big, like luxury buildings owned by investment firms who are public. They give REITs to the public and say, hey, if you want to invest in our investment company or management firm, you can buy, REITs. And that's how I invest in real estate. So I still earn the passive income that, the real estate investor earns, but I'm not, like, I don't sign any titles over to me or anybody in my team. It's just basically buying a real estate stock, which is why I like it.
Yeah. Well, I haven't gotten to the REITs. Like I'm familiar with them. I said, once again, it's I'm more focused on cash flow and just the aspect of doing the actual the real estate deal themselves, while still being somewhat, I won't say completely passive, like I said, but I'm not all the way active because, like I said, I'm split in so many different ways with the different businesses I'm a part of. But I just see like a greater return than being able to deal with REITs. Plus, like another difference is that like I also get to share in the tax benefits with joint ventures or syndications, from that standpoint there, where you're just getting the portfolio income, which is still passive in relative range. With the REITs, you just don't really share on any huge deductions. So it's like, but it's all about kind of knowing what you're. I'm not saying that I never will. It's just a investment strategy that I'm currently in at the moment. So, and everyone has to make that assessment with themselves as well as their team that they're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually going to be talking about cryptocurrency on my next video, on my next YouTube video, which, I thought of cryptocurrency because not everybody is into cryptocurrency, but it is out there, and investors are investing and growing their their wealth this way too. So just because an investment isn't I can do on my own, right? Doesn't mean that there's people out there that can't do it. So, that's just from an accounting perspective. So I'm curious, I was thinking about this all week to ask you this question. Is it easier for a 1099 employee to buy a property or a W-2? Let's say I'm a 1099 employee and all I do is earn 1099. I don't have any W-2 income, but does it make it harder for just a 1099 professional, like a consultant, to buy property, their first property, if they're not a W-2?
It actually depends, and because the thing with the W-2 employee, that the lenders and the really what makes it going to be difficult whether or not is the lender, if you're having to work with trying to get debt, and lenders to determine your debt to income ratio. They like the fact that people have W-2s and they got consistent income that's coming in, so that it makes it easier to get financing to an extent from that standpoint. From the 1099 side, it may not be as consistent that the lender would like to see, especially if you're kind of in those first few years of your business and there may be some huge losses, or startup costs associated with doing the business itself. So, but as you become more seasoned with your business and better management, your cash flow, and really better tax strategy, so you're not just taking a whole bunch of deductions and not showing any income from your business. So that's where it gets, it's easier from the W-2 perspective. But as the 1099 individual kind of grows their business, have better tax strategy in place to still show income on their tax returns, it could even the playing field from that perspective.
Right. I just totally took us off track about syndications, but I was waiting all week to ask you that question. So thank you for
No,
sharing that.
No, no, it's a really good question.
All right, so let's get back to syndication. So my first question was, is it worth it? So we kind of said it might be, depending on what your team is like and other factors. So what do you think? Is it worth it? You're doing it, so why don't you tell us from, uh, um, somebody who's actually doing this stuff?
For me, like I find it worth it. Like I'm really big on teams. I'm really big on relationships and sharing not just the rewards but the risk as well. Because I mean, all our time is precious, and like I said, I don't want to be so bogged down and just into this one thing that can take up a lot of capital and a lot of time. So for me, I always find it worth it to do it, and I find it worth for anyone to actually do it. The issue that you will come across that will, it's not so much if doing syndications is right, is whether or not doing syndication with a certain group is right to do, or is that right for you, or is that a good investment. So it goes deeper than whether or not you should do syndications, is whether or not if the deal and the people involved deserve your time and your capital, and mitigating risk as much as they reasonably can. No one can sit here and say 100% their investments are risk free at this point. Like if they are saying that, you definitely don't want to go that route. So always just make sure people understand, like, what's your investment strategy, what the investment strategy align with this syndication, and then is the deal strong enough and is the team strong enough to ensure that you are getting reasonable returns.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So raising capital, it could be between just the investors who are doing this syndication. They can just come together, 5 people, and say, hey, we want to do this deal on a commercial property, whatever it is, storage units or whatever, and they, put in capital into the deal. So that's one way to raise capital for a syndication. What are some other ways?
You got people that are doing friends and family. There's all the different social media gurus out there who are, Grant Cardone is one of them, where they kind of drumming up interest. Brian Chavis is another one, and they can raise capital from their network of investors that are learning from them, and in order to take down bigger deals. So that's where you kind of get into, like, once you start talking about people who are just primarily just passively investing and not going to be actively involved as well. Now we're into dealing with securities and SEC regulations. You just want to make sure you have the right attorneys in place. But those are typically, like I say, either going to be with the group itself, who everyone has an active role, or you're raising capital from outsiders, or even, like I say, even from friends and family.
Yeah. You can also go to a private lender or hard money lender, depending on where you're at financially. I think that's a good way to raise some capital. So what is the average return? We talked about risk, but what is the average return on, well, anything that's over 5 units is commercial. So let's talk about storage units.
Mm-hmm.
Not something that I would ever buy, but storage units, those, there's over hundreds of storage units inside one storage property, right?
Right.
So what is the typical return on that? Have you ever
I mean, typically I'm seeing with most indications, whether it's like apartments or storage, like it's ranging somewhere between 8 and 13% return. And like I say, it could be higher, it could be lower. It always kind of depends on what's the overall perspective of the distributions that are being paid out, if they're preferred or if it's actual based on equity, so forth and so forth. So, but that's typically what I'm saying. Somewhere between 8 and 13% is the kind of average cash on cash return that there are people are seeing on a lot of these deals.
Okay. And the last question is, can you build wealth through just real estate syndication?
Uh, well, just through real estate indications, I won't say just through that, but it is a once again, if you try and diversify even within real estate, where it's okay, I got some money over here, just raising, like, bringing cash flow that way. Because a lot of these deals, like, there's a life expectancy of them, and not many of them last longer than 5 or 7 years. But then you can use that capital to reinvest into something else that's still going to generate cash flow, provide some tax saving opportunities for you to help mitigate your liability there, and then you just snowball that into more and more wealth building opportunities for you. So can you solely do it based on just real estate syndications? I have a tough time saying that for anything just by itself, but it is a big piece of that puzzle that I think everyone should do their research on, work with the right consultants and right advisors to ensure that you're getting to the right deals.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, well, that answers all my questions. I don't know if there's anybody watching. There's one person watching, but if anybody has questions, please drop those in the comments. I actually wanted to thank Zoom for this opportunity for us to be able to do this. It wouldn't have been possible without this great technology that Zoom is providing. And of course, Larry, thank you so much for joining once again. If there's anything that any topics that you want to cover or talk about, feel free to mention it.
No, I think this is rather important. I think a lot of people still are trying to figure out short-term rental strategies and all that, but then real estate, 1031 exchanges is always a hot button topic as well. So, and that's just general, like, hey, retirement accounts, how to really leverage that for investing as well as just tax saving opportunities there. So there's so many more topics that people like definitely need to know about when they're because no one strategy is a lifelong strategy. Like you're layering different things to mitigate your liability as much as possible.
Right, absolutely. As we always say, this is purely informational purposes. I add that to the end of every podcast. This is our opinions and ours. So, take this with a grain of salt as always, because every situation is different. Every investor is different. Every income year is different. So whatever it is that you're doing, investing or just, W-2 employee and doing some 1099 work on the side or whatever, all of that is going to make a big difference at the end of the year. And, as always, consult with a tax advisor or an accountant. And thank you so much, Larry, for joining. And I'll come up with a new topic for next time and I'll let you know.
Awesome.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that, Rena. You have a good one.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.